Hey, what is up guys? So we are going to be doing another awesome budget deck profile. This is going to be GraveKeepers. This one is really friendly for you guys to learn how to play. Very simple deck, and I would say it is pretty budget friendly. But anyways, first off, I do want to mention these cards down below in the side area. This is not my actual side deck. It's just some cards that you can swap in from your main deck if you happen to not own some of these, or you just don't like them. You can swap them out for player preference. But anyways, let's go ahead and jump right into the deck profile. I'll briefly explain some of the cards as we go along, and let's get started. So first off, triple Gravekeepers command. He's technically the strongest Gravekeeper when you normal summon him. He's 2100 once you have Necro Valley on the field, and you basically send him to the grave, and you get to add a Necro Valley. So he basically speeds up the deck and throws a Gravekeeper in there. So it's pretty nice for another card we'll talk about later. Next up, one Gravekeeper's Assailant. Basically, when you have Necro Valley, you can switch the battle position of your opponent's monsters, which is really nice because sometimes you can't get over monsters. Sometimes when there's a bigger monster on the field, this deck can have a problem if they don't happen to have the cards to pop or certain cards to get rid of them, because you really rely on your back row to deal with monsters that have too high of an attack, or something like Thought Ruler, Archfiend, or Stardust Dragon, where they would kind of negate some of your traps. But he's able to move stuff to defense position or attack position if maybe your opponent happens to have a token, like Draco Sack special summons a token. You can move that token to attack position and attack for 2000. That can make the difference sometimes in a game when they are at very low life points. Next up, two Gravekeepers Ascendant. This is pretty much the go-to card, I would say. If your opponent happens to have one strong monster on the field, they attack into a face-down Spy. So, a Spy's effect, when she flips, you get to special summon a Gravekeeper's monster with 1500 or less attack from your deck. Like I said, if they happen to have a very strong monster that you can't answer with back row, Thought Ruler Archfiend would be an example of something that can be problematic against Gravekeepers. I'll show you guys this card really quick. But he doesn't really see too much play because when the activation of a spell or trap card targets one psychic monster, he can pay 1000 life points and negate it. So that card has, pretty much not seeing much play in the past couple formats. This card used to be really popular a while ago, but yeah, it's been a long time since Thought Ruler Archfiend saw a lot of play. But yeah, he's not a bad card at all, simply because it gets rid of a lot of the back row that Gravekeepers have. So if you get matched up against Gravekeepers, if you happen to have room in your extra deck and you have problems against Gravekeepers, I would say Thought Ruler Archfiend is an excellent card. So, like I said, if they happen to attack into Spy, you can flip and then get out Gravekeeper's Ascendant. As long as you have a normal summon next turn that is a Gravekeeper, you can tribute it. Usually the best card to actually tribute is actually Recruiter, because when he's sent to the graveyard, you get to add another Gravekeeper monster. Usually you can just keep on recycling Recruiter, which becomes very annoying for your opponent. But yeah, like I said, Thought Ruler Archfiend can be a nasty card to run into. Next up, 3 Spy, and it's pretty self-explanatory. It's probably one of the best Gravekeeper cards, other than this card. I like this card a lot too. But yeah, Gravekeeper Spy is an excellent card. Necro Valley technically shuts down a lot of the meta decks too. I mean, certain decks like, Elemental Dragons, any Chaos deck, Necro Valley hurts a lot. I do want to mention real quick that it does not stop Treeborn Frog. That is a card that gets around Necro Valley. Anything that, actually targets itself, it says on the bottom, except by their own effects. They've actually changed the wording on Necro Valley so many times. I don't know if they've changed, I think it's like 5+ times. They've changed the card text on this, because before it said like anything that involves a graveyard is negated. It was like really strict on it, but then they changed the wording on the card a lot, like I said. But anyways, next up we have Gravekeeper's Guard. He's a flip effect monster, so it's a little bit slow, but you just select one monster your opponent controls and return it to the hand. So, any XYZ or Synchro that you can't get over, Gravekeeper Guard is there for you. Next up, 1 Gale. I really love this card in here. I recommend putting in like 1 Gale or 1 Grand Mole in the deck, because sometimes you need to get rid of a monster immediately. Like I said, Stardust Dragon can be a problem. Something like Legendary 6 Samurai Shion, this card can deal with those cards really quickly. Or even like a Jinzo, if someone happens to be playing some deck that runs Jinzo, maybe like a Frog Monarch deck, they summon Jinzo and all your, your traps are not going to be live, and, Gale has instant access to just get rid of certain monsters. And he's also a tuner, which I love, because it allows you to go for, Armor Master, it allows you to go for Black Rose Dragon, Spy flips, you get a monster, then you normal summon Gale, and you go for something like maybe even Arcanite Magician, because this card is a fantastic card. If you can successfully, pop 2 cards, that's not bad after halving someone's Shion or something like that, getting rid of the back row, and then maybe you happen to have some other card that you can bring out later on. But yeah, Gale is a fantastic card. I recommend you guys, like I said, to play like 1 Grandma, 1 Gale, something just to get over a monster when you need to really quickly, because this deck can have problems against those. Next up, 3 Gravekeepers Recruiter. So when this card you control is sent to the graveyard, you basically get to add any Gravekeeper except for Spy. So it's 1500 or less defense. So that adds everything in the deck except for Spy, pretty much. I don't think there's any other GraveKeepers that is like a really good one that you would play. But GraveKeepers are getting more support, so who knows? Maybe this card will be even better in the future. Next up, I opted to go with just one Maxi, 2 Valor. The problem with Maxi in this deck, it's not like you can draw a bunch of cards to OTK your opponent. The only card that you can really draw to you know, put up a threat is to draw into a whole bunch of traps, and then if your opponent's already going off, it doesn't really matter. So you can even cut Maxi completely. I think Effect Valor is probably more useful in the deck, simply because, you know, it stops your opponent from even making, you know, that synchro, that XYZ, whereas Maxi, it allows them to do it, and then they might say, who cares about how many cards you have? I'm going to OTK you, because you're not going to have room to play Gores in this deck, because obviously Necro Valley is going to be sitting on the field. If you want, maybe you can throw in Tragodia. Maxi will be much better for you, but for the way that, you know, standard GraveKeepers play, I don't really think you can really draw into anything that, like I said, is going to hurt your opponent, other than traps, which, you know, have to be played on, like, the next 2 turns, basically. But yeah, Valor's pretty good. Next up, Dark Hole, 1 Royal Tribute. The only thing that you don't play is going to be like your hand traps, which you can actually opt to remove if you wish to do that. And then Gale. Royal Tribute is a really broken card, because after Necro Valley is out, who cares what they're going to be able to do with the graveyard, because they're pretty much not going to have access to it. Royal Tribute is a really OP card. When you open up with it first turn, usually your opponents will cry, and you can't really blame them for that, because sometimes you discard all their cards. I remember someone did this to me when I was playing Mermails. They activated Royal Tribute, I lost my entire hand, and I was like, okay, well, I think let's go to game 2 now, because this card, it just does that sometimes. Next up, 3 Pot of Duality. You will rarely special summon, and most of your special summoning is going to be done with Spy anyways, which is usually on your opponents from when they attack into it, so you don't really need to special summon too hard in this deck. Next up, 2 GraveKeeper Stele. So it basically lets you recycle your recruiters. Sometimes you need to get this card back. It has no restrictions on it. It's just any 2 GraveKeeper monsters in your graveyard, which is really nasty, because, you know, obviously your opponent can't, you know, get cards out of the graveyard or banish and stuff, but you can, like, don't worry about it. Next up, 1 MST. I don't really feel like this deck really needs that much of back row. Hate, because, you know, you have your cards. You basically, most of your cards just, like, you just try to go in. If they stop you, who cares? You're getting another one anyways. Next up, Book of Moon is really good with Spy. You can reset it. I do like Lance. Sometimes your opponents will try to push over Spy, because they're like, I need to get over Spy, because if he goes for Descendant pops a monster, I'll lose. So, like, sometimes you can Lance your opponent's monster and stuff like that. I just like Lance. I think it's good at 1 in this deck, because it's just an awesome card. And it sucks when you get, you know, some of your stuff bottomless. I do want to mention that you cannot bottomless Arcanite Magician, because after it gets Synchro Summoned, you then place the counters on it. So yeah, that's just an important thing to remember. Next up, we have 3 Necro Valley. Fantastic card in GraveKeepers. Next up, 1 Bottomless, 2 Mirror Force, 1 Torrential, 1 D Prison. I just feel like it's a little bit too slow. I wish you could play 2 Compulse. I'd definitely throw in some more Compulses in here if Compulse wasn't at 1. 1 D Prison, 1 Compulse, 3 Fiendish Chains, probably one of the best trap cards in the game. And then Solemn Warning. For the extra deck, I'll briefly mouse over it, but I'll mention the most important ones. This card is very, very important. I threw in Roach here because, you know, Lightsworn is getting more support, and that deck is going to be very popular, guys. Do not underestimate the power of Lightsworn, because Lightsworns won't care about Necro Valley, really, unless they're trying to get out like a BLS or something like that. But generally, you're only going to be going for rank 4s, but this card is very important, Zen Meister, because it allows you to detach, and then target one face of monster you control, and you change face down defense position, which basically means reset Spy. Sometimes you can really abuse Guard over and over if you happen to get lucky with it, but generally, you're not going to be going for too many XYZs or Synchros. I mean, you have the option to do it with just Gale, that's about it. But as far as, oh, and Effect Valor, that's also a card that you can go for. There's also Direwolf, but Direwolf is not technically too budget friendly, so I didn't opt to put it there. But if you happen to have it, you know, hey, it's not that bad. You can also go for Zen Mains, but I figure Leviar is, you know, also good because you always get back your opponent's stuff, and usually they won't banish stuff anyway, so you really don't need it. You technically have a lot of room in your extra deck in this deck. But another way you could play this deck is like a Malefic build if you want to like main deck Skill Drains, throw in some Malefics. There's also Deck Devastation Virus, Eradicator Epidemic Virus that you can really utilize in this deck. This deck only really has 1 summon. You usually only get like 1 summon, so if you want to play like the Malefic, it's not bad at all, or like Cyber Dragon or something like that, or if you really want to play like, you know, Thunder King, that's a good card. Grandma, we briefly talked about it. Sometimes your opponent won't attack you because I think it's a face down Spy, so you can main deck maybe one Snowmate Eater and surprise your opponent sometimes. You can also go for Karkar-D, but the problem that I have with Karkar-D in the deck is you can't draw into anything that allows you to make a huge push. Like, the best thing you can really hope for is to get, like, maybe a Royal Tribute, but then you can't even use it that turn. But, I mean, the best thing you can ask for is a Spy, which doesn't let you set it that turn. So I'm not sure how I feel about card D. There was a deck that topped with, I believe, 2 card Ds. I don't remember the exact regional or YCS at the top, but yeah, there was one. But like I said, I didn't see really the point in it, because you leave your field blank, but technically you do have a lot of back row, so you can use that argument that you have enough back row to be, safe. But then you can't set the back row you add. I don't know. I just don't really like card D. But hey, if it works for you, let me know. Next up, one Raikou, because like I said, sometimes they'll expect the spy to be face down, so they won't attack, and you like flip Raikou, hit a back row, maybe, I don't know, summon something else, and then make a push. But like I said, you can't really make it that big of a push in this deck. Next up, Effect Veiler. Like I said, you can play more Veilers. You can just swap out the Maxis if you really want, honestly. The Maxi isn't really like good in this deck, because like I mentioned before, you can't draw into anything that lets you like OTK or something like that. Next up, Direwolf, which we briefly talked about. Like I said, it's not too budget friendly, but it's not a bad card at all. Lets you pop anything. Zeming's also good. If you want to play more MSC, by all means, you can play more MSC. It's not bad. Or there was a tech that a lot of players liked a long time ago, which is 7 Tools. Really old school card. This was main decked in a ton of top GraveKeepers decks. Usually it's only at 1, because this was at a time when Solemn Warning was at 3. So that was kind of the reason why people use 7 Tools so often. And it also stopped, Gladiator Beast War Chariot, because there's not very many things that stop it. I mean, you could do Dark Bribe if you want. But, yeah, 7 Tools was a fantastic card. If you guys want to try that, that's also another card that I didn't really mention. But, like I said, since Warning's at 1, it's not as, like, hot, basically, is what it comes down to. But, yeah, you could definitely main deck Skill Drain. You can play more D-Pairs. And Skill Drain is fantastic in this deck, simply because you really don't need too many effects. I mean, you have Spy, which is a flip effect, so obviously you wait till they, attack into your Spy, you get your effect, and then if main phase 2 they want to Synchro XYZ, you can Skill Drain at that point. Or if you really need to Skill Drain immediately, you have that option, and Spy still has 2500 defense. So that's going to be the deck profile for GraveKeepers. If you want to download it, I'll put the link in the description box, and you can download it into your as a YDK file and put it into your DevPro folder. But anyways, if you guys have any suggestions for this deck was actually modified from a bunch of top YCS GraveKeepers deck that I looked at. There was Tyler Tabman, and I'm sorry, I don't remember all the names. I looked this up yesterday, and I just didn't upload the video until today. But like I said, you don't really need these hand traps, so if you happen to not own these, or if you want to switch them up for other cards, maybe you want more MSTs, maybe you want more summons in this deck. Another thing I want to mention, Malefic Stardust Dragon is probably going to be better than this card, because Necro Valley shuts down certain decks, and Stardust will protect your Necro Valley so your opponent can't get rid of it, because dragons can become very sad once Necro Valley is on the field, but be aware that some of them do play Dragon's Ravine, and they'll just throw it right on top of your Necro Valley, and Necro Valley will unfortunately go away. But anyways, thanks for watching, guys. If you have any suggestions for this deck, hey, let me know in the comment section below. I'm not too sure if I'm going to be playing GraveKeepers, because the deck is really slow, and it's a really linear deck, and I like decks that have huge combos and, can make plays. This deck is going to be a slow deck, so if you're more of a slow control player, this might be a deck that you might enjoy. So anyways, thanks for watching, guys. Have a great day. Asian Eyes, signing out.